No, good morning. Good to see you in Colombo.
Good to see you.
So,
It's
long
been-
time since we worked in CIMA. Every time Noel comes to Sri Lanka, it has been a pleasure to meet up with him. And every conversation that I have with him is so intellectually stimulating. You have so much of knowledge, and I'm glad that you are here. I hope you had a good time.
Oh yes, Colombo is always a wonderful place to come to. Sri Lanka is fantastic. Had a very good time. Met people, ran programs and courses for different corporates, senior members, and others, and really very fantastic. And
Right. Um, so I want to tell the audience I'm launching my second book called Awaken. And once I did the transcript, I was looking for someone to go through it and see what is in the book and what he feels. So Noel's name came up, and I asked him. I mean, knowing very well he's busy. He's consulting to three governments in Africa, to Ghana, Rwanda, and Nigeria. So I was worried about his time. But then I sent the transcript. He readily said, "Of course." And I understand this was the only book you reviewed. You
yes,
usually don't review books.
I usually don't. One, I don't have the time for it, and two, normally if you review a book, you've got to be very honest with the authors, and not many people can take that honesty. I mean, so
Right.
I usually don't do that.
So I'm so honored that I managed to get his mind space, and he was able to put something together. So I want to talk through Noel. Awaken is a book of some of the pods I did. I converted into a book because there were some requests that came up. So, what was your first impression when you saw the book in terms of the articulation, the design, and the construct of the book?
I think I didn't. I mean, I got the book, so I just decided to read it out of curiosity. The first thing that caught my attention was the first chapter, Finding Nemo, and the lessons we learned from that. And I thought that was an interesting way of introducing management practice and management thought to people using popular culture. And that took me back to a book written by a guy called Gareth Morgan. I was one of the foremost management thinkers, where he used metaphors to describe organizations. And that book probably is about nearly 30 years old, or 25 or so years old. It was one of the most fantastic books in management that I read. So immediately, that was the hook that got me. And then I started reading, and what I wanted to look at was how was the metaphor working. And so the second element of surprise came in. I thought you were simply going to do popular culture, so Finding Nemo, and then the use managing practice as a metaphor. As soon as I finished reading that, I thought, okay, let me go on. I thought I was going to the next chapter. And then at the end of that first chapter, I saw that you had introduced management thinking and concept into it. So whereas other people would have popular culture, some kind of metaphor and practice, or metaphor and theory, you combine all three of them. So that was the second surprising thing. The third surprising thing for me was that they all hang together, because it's quite difficult to get either theory and practice hanging together very well, or theory and popular culture or a construct using as a metaphor hanging very well, or practice and a metaphor hanging very well.
Right.
But to get all three hanging very well was very surprising to me. So those were my first impressions, and that made me go on and read other parts of it. I mean, what sticks to my mind, for example, was the kite metaphor. You go up, you come down, and what you do in terms of that. And there were others dealing not only with intellectual thought, but with emotional intelligence and other parts of it, was very good. So that's what kept me going.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting they picked Nemo out. That was, in fact, the first
That's the first
article
chapter.
I wrote
Oh, I see.
into the papers, and it was a little article. When I sat down to watch this movie, I never realized that I would learn such a big lesson from the movie.
Yes, yes.
And then, of course, you mentioned kite. Again, the metaphor is kite goes up only when it stands against the wind.
That one, yes.
So I remember my mother telling me once, I was in the bank and I was trying to restructure, and the unions were, writing various type of stuff, trying to degrade you, and I was a bit upset. And my mother told me something I'll remember for the rest of my life. She said, "Son, it doesn't matter if your shadow looks crooked as long as you are standing straight." And I
Yes, exactly.
I thought that was so powerful. So that's the story behind the kite. And then I had about 18 little chapters that I brought in. So Noel, you have read a lot, you have written a lot, you supervise PhDs for Oxford, and that's the level at which you are. Uh, how do you rate this humble work that I have done in terms of today's literature that is available?
I think it will have a wide audience. So normally I split the literature into what I call popular literature, which is meant for mainly practitioners. Well, sometimes even not for practitioners operating at a high end, but it has a wider appeal. People who want to understand what managers do look at that, which is kind of non-academic but popular. And then there is the high-end practitioner kind of stuff, which is produced by Harvard Business Review
Right.
people, McKinsey's and others. And they are not necessarily talking to an academic community, but they are not. It's not also for popular culture. They are looking to speak to those who are managing in the C-suite as advice to them. And then there is the other end, that is the academic end of it, which is normally speaking to academics and to those who will teach. And there's very little crossover often between the two. And so, in terms of ranking what you've done, I'd rank it. You managed to cross two genres pretty well. The popular stuff and then the C-suite stuff. I think someone who just is being introduced to management thinking and stuff like that will find this very helpful. I've seen very few books that are as good as that in terms of just speaking to people and not dumbing down. I mean, but raising the level of thinking and in terms of the writing style and other things like that. It's really very good in that sense. And then I think that it will stand on its own pretty strongly. I mean, there are very strong books from McKinsey's and others. This is not yet up to its standard, but I don't think that's what you intended to do. But so I look at, if somebody sitting in the C-suite, would he have value for this book?
Yes.
I say it will have immense value from the book, because it's a very relatable book. You're talking about issues that, if you're in the C-suite, you will meet. And my view on that is, for example, would I recommend it to my friends and others in high places? Yes, I will. So that is that. On the academic side, I don't think you meant it to be an academic book. Otherwise, it would have been a dry, very dry book. But you kind of managed to challenge thinking of people on that, to say, look, this is what people normally do. They don't do it just because they want to do it, but there is some method and thinking behind that, and the academics supports that. So I'll place it firmly in terms of my rating of it, not as an academic book, but as something that is very helpful to CEOs and C-suite people, and something that is extremely valuable for people who are beginning to think about management, and I think it would be good for those who are beginning to think about charting a career in management. So in terms of audiences, that's what I'll say. I think in terms of just the writing style, you come across very directly, and it's easily understood. I mean, it's easily understood, and that is really very good. It is easily understood, and you don't get books very often like that. I mean, you get books that have fantastic content, but you must be somebody of a particular intellectual grasp before you be able to understand what the book is saying. This is would
Simple.
really yes, it's really very simple, really. Yes, and the storytelling
Yeah, that's
is
the plan. It has to be a story.
yes, the storytelling is good, and I've over the past 2 3 years I've been talking about storytelling to various audiences, how to turn numbers into stories, how to turn issues into stories, etc. And as I read your book, one of the things that came to mind was a guy called Tahir Shah. He has a famous quote which says that stories are the common currency of humanity.
Wow.
Everybody does that. And then there's a guy called Harari Noah, or Yuval Noah Harari. He's an Israeli writer. He did his doctorate at Oxford, but he's written a lot about technology and things like that. His latest book is called Nexus, but he wrote a book called 21 Things for the 21st Century. And one of the things he said, still about storytelling, is that human beings understand stories. They talk in stories. They don't relate to facts. They don't relate to figures. They don't relate to anything like that. And once you tell a story, you'll be able to engage. So as I read your book, those two people were those who came to mind.
Thank you.
And of course, both of them have sold millions of copies of books. So maybe you might end up.
I mean, thank you for that, Noel. So it's a piece of storytelling. If you look at all the religious leaders, all the principles of faith were through stories.
Well, exactly.
So it relates, and you can absorb and digest when you simplify it.
Exactly.
So Noel, thanks for that. It's very elaborative, and I'm feeling very proud about what you just said. The art of it, and coming from you, it means a lot, Noel. So I know you got to catch a fly. So if I am to improve on what I have done, what would those be?
I think you'd be hard pressed to improve upon it. It depends on the audience that you want to target. So if it is those who are beginning to think about what managers do and how can they improve upon how they manage, I don't think there's much improvement that is needed, frankly speaking. If you were thinking about the C-suite itself, then maybe a few more actual corporate examples would be what is needed to support what you're saying, because they have to relate
and validate.
Yes, and validate it in terms of their own experience, and talk a little bit more in depth from that practice.
Right.
But once you do that, then you lose out on the popular side to it, because the book becomes larger, and my view is that most people don't read large books.
Exactly.
So that's that. So if there's going to be an improvement, it's got to be something new that picks up the themes for a particular sector of the market, which is, let's say, C-suite people, or those just below C-suite, and who are thinking about that. And then that can be used in terms of as a mentoring tool or as a coaching tool and things like that. The last bit was, if you're talking to an academic audience, then my view would be a restructuring. So the metaphor is still very good, and then the theory comes in,
Yeah, and
and then
blend it.
the application comes. So metaphor, theory, application. So that would be the structure, and then there has to be a lot more of what academic literature is bringing in that space. But when you are doing that, then you are aiming at business schools and
Right.
other things like that, where it is not only the story and the practice that is important, but the intellectual validation of those things are important. So I guess what I'm saying is that the next bit, if it's in terms of improvement, is the segmentation of the audience,
Audience.
and then the provision of material to each audience that suits their needs and their approach to thinking. So fascinating having a conversation, and I wish you well in launching the book. And we'll be quite happy to pass a few comments on the book at the launch if my time allows me.
Yes, I will definitely reach out to you. I have you online. You talked about digital access, so there's no
Yes.
limits.
Fantastic.
I will reach out to you on the 12th of December when we launch the book. I will reach out to you, and well, it will be very. I'll be very grateful, and it will be beneficial to the audience to see your perspective, your global perspective in one person. You have traveled so widely, and as I said, intellectually stimulating. Have you given me a lot of thoughts? I might even go full-time writing.
Fantastic.
Right. So that said, Noel, thanks a lot
And
for
thank you very
endorsing my
much.
book, and I'm all excited. And I'll get a copy across to you. And please do join at the launch on the 12th of
We'll
December.
join. We'll join.
And have a safe flight. And I
And
hope to
thank
see
you
you
very
soon.
much.
Thank you very much.
And for those of you who are listening to us, I mean, if you've had any experience in managing and things like that, like Bradley has done, reflect upon it. Put your thoughts down. They will exist outside of you. If you die, you haven't taken your thoughts away. You've left mankind with a valuable legacy of knowledge and experience that lives and extends beyond you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.